Happy Monday, everybody. Give everybody time to start coming in, and I'll gather my thoughts. Get that light there out of the way. All right. Starting to get some people coming in on locals. Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. I always feel like an escaped prison inmate when I wear this shirt for some reason, especially with a white t-shirt underneath. Hello, Carrie. How are you doing today? Good to see you. See you. How was your weekend? See if I can move my camera over a little bit. Boop, boop. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the ticket. It lets me sit back. Carrie's doing good. Well, I'm so happy to see you. Put on my Ojos. Hi, Penny. Good to see Penny here. Let's talk about our weekend first, and then we'll start talking about emotional health stuff. There was a nice post on our locals group yesterday, and I thought we could talk about that a little bit. What's in the news today? I guess $2 trillion has been wiped out of the stock market today. Everybody's worried about a global recession or something like that. Carrie had a nice weekend, celebrated her mom's 77th birthday on Saturday. Wow, 77. Did you have 77 candles, or did you just do the one candle thing? I was wondering how long it was going to take somebody to talk about my microphone. Yeah, it's a new microphone. I've got it on a microphone stand, so it doesn't sit on my table. That way, when I do this, I get emphatic. It doesn't affect my microphone. Anyway, it's kind of still in its test period to see if I like it better than the other microphone. That other microphone I was using, I've been using that for 5 years, and I've never had any trouble with it. So I wasn't really in the market for a microphone, but Amazon sent me this to test out, and so that's why I got it. No candles. Okay. Well, if you watched or listened to Last Symptom podcast last week on Friday or Saturday, no, it does. Penny asks if the collars change according to my emotions. I don't think so. I think it's random. Let's see if it does anything. Hey, I'm happy. Everything's fine. I got nothing to worry about. I just don't worry about my problem. No, I thought maybe the blue was for the sad, but nope, blue's for happy too. I think it's random. So if you listen to the Last Symptom podcast, you heard my daughter and I talking about how my friend Jeff was going to come down. We were going to play cards. I was going to teach my daughter this card game. We did that. My daughter loved it. So she was very happy. She's been waiting years for us to teach her that game. It's a complicated game. It's kind of like chess, but in a card game. And thank you, Carrie. Yeah, I think she's adorable too. I'm a little biased, but I appreciate that. So we taught her this game, and my buddy brought down some whiskey. Yeah, her animation skill, I can't believe when she showed me that. I said, "How long have you been learning this?" "Oh, I've been messing around with it for like a month," she said. I was really impressed. She's I'll tell you, she's just really I never thought I'd be like an old outdated dad, but she knows these things that I don't know about, like devices and apps and technology and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I have become the thing I feared the most, an old fuddy duddy. So my friend brought down a bunch of whiskey, and that night we were up until about 3:30 in the morning, drinking, watching movies, playing cards. My daughter wasn't drinking, but she was watching the movies with us. She was playing the cards with us. And man, I got up the next morning. I looked exactly like you would expect a person to look who's been drinking until 3:30 in the morning at my age. And bilingual, very impressive. Yeah, sure. That's been something that's been really important to me, is that she keep both languages. Until she was about 4, she only spoke Spanish. If you guys listen to some of the old episodes of Last Symptom, when I do the interviews with her and stuff, you can tell English was not her first language. Spanish is her original language. And so it's important to me that she maintain that she maintain an appreciation for both her Honduran culture, but also her Appalachian gringo culture, and to value them both equally. Well, before I propose a topic, what's on everybody's minds today, this week? How are y'all feeling, and how's your progress coming with whatever it is you're working on? Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. I have a brand new internet. And so I'm eager to watch this back later and see how it's doing. Hi, Nana. Uh, so yesterday I uploaded a video, a 4K high quality video. It was about an hour long. With my old internet, that would have taken 2.5 to 3 hours to upload. With my new internet, it took me 15 minutes. 15 minutes. It's going to change my life. It's going to make my work so much easier. It was so burdensome to make a video and then have to upload it. So think about your me. And let's say that I record an episode of the Last Symptom podcast. That might take an hour and a half, just the recording. Immediately afterwards, I do the editing. The editing takes, so if it takes me an hour and a half to do the original recording, how long do you think the editing takes? It takes at least 2 hours, because I got to go through the thing, cut out things, put the introduction in, put the music in, do all that stuff. So take at least 2 hours. And then I got to upload it. and it would take 2.5 to 3 hours. So imagine how much time was going into just a single video episode of Last Symptom Podcast. It's 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, 6 hours, 15 minutes. It's my entire day. With this new internet, because an upload like that only takes 15 minutes, oh my goodness, such a relief. So I'm very happy about that. But because of the increased upload speeds, I think that these videos, the quality of my live streams, should be a lot better from now on. We shouldn't have any of the technical issues that we had from time to time with my old internet. So that's the news. That's news on my end. I had an appointment this morning, early for me. So I set my alarm, got up early this morning, rushing around, jumped in the shower, took my shower, got dressed, tried to throw some coffee into me, got ready, made the phone call, and the person I called said this to me: Brian, that appointment is for the 12th of August. So I did all that for an appointment I thought I had this morning. That's not until next Monday. So next Monday I get to do all that all over again. That's how my day started off. How did your Monday start off? Nana, thank you for sharing that. Nana says that this week he's been working on having conversations with people without judgment, advice, or correction. Is anybody else working on that? That's something I'm really excited about for Nana. Having conversations without judgment. What does that mean? To observe somebody or to communicate with somebody without judgment? Does it mean that inside of yourself you don't have opinions about whether they're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, or whether something's good or bad? Is that what that means? Did we talk about this last week? There's a word I've been sharing with people that I talk to lately that I would like you folks to think about. It's a word that you're going to start hearing me talk about a lot when it comes to emotional health and authentic recovery. The word is equivalency. I know there's some folks in here that I've shared this discussion with. Equivalency. What do you think I mean by equivalency when it comes to emotional health? Laws and principles of emotional health. I'll give you folks a chance to weigh in, to see where you might think I'm going at with this. I like it when our live streams are a conversation rather than just a speech. Equivalency. You guys can't tell, but these glasses are so beat up. They've got scratches all over the lenses. Of course, many of you know that I broke the thing here years ago, and I had to fix it with a staple. I took a staple, or was it? Yeah, I think it was a staple. I ran that through there with some needle nose pliers and twisted it around to hold that on. I know that one of our members here recommended a glasses place where I could get glasses for cheap, and I did go there. I'll tell you what, my reluctance to use that service is that I can't. I want to see the thing. I want to be able to see it physically, see them physically, and try them on physically before I spend money on something. Julie says equivalency of inherent value. Equivalency of inherent value. Well, that's a good one. Yeah. So it would apply there. I think what Julie's saying is that people are all equal when it comes to our inherent value. That's true. Think about this, that in all things that relate to emotional health, emotionally healthy living, emotionally healthy perspectives and thinking, that an equivalency principle is involved. Now, you've heard me talk about this in the past as teeter-totter. You've also heard me talk about it in terms of harmony with life. I'm going to start referring to it as the equivalency principle, or maybe even the equivalency law, because the reason why I might call it a law is because it's the only way, by applying it and understanding it, it's the only way that you get to enjoy emotional health. Let me give you an example, personal example. So when I had my borderline personality disorder crisis, the effect of my behaviors and everything that I did created an imbalance. See, emotional disorder is an imbalance. Everything in life is imbalanced. It's disordered. There is no balance or harmony or equivalency. So unhealthy people, Julie on YouTube says, is equivalency how you can't develop it naturally, you can develop its equivalent. Well, sort of. Hear the story out that I'm talking about here. When I had my borderline personality disorder crisis, it created a great imbalance. In other words, great injustices. So a lot of people suffered who would not have otherwise suffered if it weren't for me. Now, they suffered confusion, they suffered unhappiness, they suffered pain, they suffered in a lot of ways because of my behaviors and choices during that period of time, which were made based on ignorance of my situation, of course, and of my condition. Still, it was a great injustice. It created a great imbalance. And for years, as Julie says, as far as emotional health developing in a natural way, you can work at it over life. Well, for it to develop in a natural way depends on one's perspectives. So that's all it is. It's just perspectives. So anybody can work on identifying certain perspectives that they live with that are unhealthy and inaccurate, correcting those perspectives, and then you get a natural result. The natural result is good emotional health. But anyway, back to this great injustice, this unbalanced, great imbalance that I created. How do I correct that? So imagine that I've really hurt, and I created an unjust situation for, let's say, 50 people. How do I fix that? Everything's imbalanced now. They've suffered, and I've caused it. Well, the way that I fix it is not by going around to each individual. So I don't have to go around to every individual within those 50 that I've created this imbalance in life for. What's the answer? Well, the answer is that I have to compensate. Something I can do can bring everything back into balance. What's that equivalency? So think back to what caused the imbalance or the injustice in 50 people's lives. What was that imbalance? The imbalance was my emotional disorder and the effects of my emotional disorder. How do I bring everything back into balance? What's the equivalent opposite of that? The equivalent opposite of that is me working on identifying the causes of the emotional disorder and correcting that. So the value of it is exactly equal to the causes that created the injustice. Do you see that? So notice that I don't have to go around and get 50 people's forgiveness. All I have to do is identify what was the cause of all this that brought all of this injustice and imbalance into being. What was the cause of that? I want to identify it and correct it. If I identify it and correct it, now I've brought things into harmony. I've brought everything into balance because I've identified and addressed the equivalent thing that created it all in the first place. Is that making any sense? I'll give you another example. While I was going through my recovery, one thing I realized is that I had all these feelings, all these negative feelings and accusations against my father. Now, consider the situation I'm in. I've just gone through a divorce. I've hurt so many people. I've destroyed my life. I've destroyed my wife's life. Think about all the people who are hurt. It affects them too. My in-laws, my brother-in-law. What about all of our friends? It affects them too. And I remember thinking, the more that I studied this, my specific circumstances, and I realized how responsible my father was for all this, because it's the effects of his parenting on me as a child that have now manifested in me as an adult. Now, as long as I was a child, my father was responsible for everything involving me. But if I walk outside with a slingshot and I blast out somebody's car window with my slingshot, my father's responsible for that. He's the one who has to pay to get the window fixed. Well, that's true for everything. Everything in my life, as long as I was a child, my father's responsible for that. My father and my mother. But because the effects of it really happened in my adulthood, when I was an adult, it was created a complex situation where what am I responsible for and what's he responsible for? See? Well, the short answer is he's responsible for all the damage that was caused. I'm responsible for never having identified it and fixed it. So was he responsible for all the pain that I caused my wife and my in-laws and our friends? Well, we shared responsibility for it. So yes, he is responsible. But I'm responsible too, because these are things that happened in my adulthood. I had never identified and fixed them, which also contributed to me doing the things that I did. Penny says that my correction of my emotional health has created a ripple effect. The way you treat others now, the people you educate about emotional health. Thank you. I believe that too. Julie says, the only way I can see to correct an imbalance with an individual is to let them know that you will work as hard as you can to understand what. No, not to let them know. It's to do it. It's not letting them know you're going to do it. It's you doing it. That's what creates the balance. Not you talking about it or not them knowing about it. It's you doing it. That's what creates the balance. Whether they ever find out about it or not, whether they ever find out that you're working on yourself to identify and fix those things is irrelevant. The most important thing is that you do it. You doing it is what creates the balance, not them being aware of you doing it or of you talking to them about doing it. Nana says, would you describe the principle of equivalency as the process of balancing the scales to achieve a kind of equilibrium? No, Julie. Not to let them know that it matters to you. It's doing it. It's doing it. It doesn't matter if they ever know that it matters to you. What matters is if it matters to you. This is so important, and I'll tell you why. Because emotional disorder is built, it's entirely built on an unhealthy concern for what other people think. Everything is done because of what one imagines other people think. So it's imperative that for recovery to be authentic, that has nothing to do with anything, what other people think. I'm going to switch over here to, well, I'll tell you what, we got a couple people on YouTube. I was going to close it down for locals only, but because we got a couple people on YouTube, I'm going to keep it going so that you folks can hear the rest of this conversation. Back to this situation that I created in Philadelphia. So the damage is all behind me. Everything's in tatters. And I start analyzing where this all started, these issues that I'm dealing with. And I realized my father and my mother were very much responsible for me dealing with these issues at all. You can imagine the feelings that I experienced. A lot of anger toward my dad, especially. I also thought of him as a bad person. A lot of anger and bitterness. And I thought there's just no excuse for that. There's no excuse for what he did to me. And so I thought about him in these very negative, even hateful ways. But then I had a realization, and this is where the equivalency comes in. I had a realization. I had just done the same things to like 50 people in my life. Worse. I had done worse than my father had done. So I'm trying through this process I'm trying to redefine my relationship with my father and my thoughts toward him, and how am I supposed to look at the man now? And I realized there has to be something more. He can't just be a bad guy because of this, like some irredeemable bad guy that I'm supposed to hate for the rest of my life because I didn't want people to think that way about me. And I knew that I didn't have any evil intents. I had no evil intentions in my heart when I did all the things that so negatively affected so many people in my life. So how can I think of my father as being this bad, terrible guy, but I don't want to think of myself that way? You see the equivalency? I can't apply one standard to my father and apply a different standard to me. So then I started thinking, well, why did my dad mistreat me? Like, why was my dad abusive? Probably because of his parents, right? Not probably. He was that way because of his parents. So at some point in my dad's life, he also was an innocent child. And he also had been mistreated in the same ways that I had, which led him to mistreat me, which led me to mistreat others. But there's got to be, in there somewhere, there has to be some responsibility, right? It's not just because I was abused and I grew up and didn't know about it and I abused others that I'm just not responsible for that at all. There's no blame to be had. I'm just fine. I can live with a clean conscience no matter what, right? That also can't work. You're starting to see the equivalency thing, principle or law that I'm talking about here. I had to make sense of it in my mind to be able to understand how to look at others and how to look at myself. And to understand the nature of those relationships, the nature of good and bad, the nature of responsibility, and all these things. So, really, this exercise of analyzing my father and trying to come to terms with how I'm supposed to view this man from now on, because I've viewed him a certain way all the way up till now in my life. But now things are different. I know things I didn't know before. So now I have to completely reorganize my thoughts and my understanding about this man. What did it come down to? It came down to, does he care or not? So when he was given when he's been given opportunities up till now, I'll tell you that I hold out hope for my dad. Things could change. I'm not saying that he's inherently bad or anything like that. I'm saying up until now, when given opportunities to analyze himself and to try to get to the bottom of what has allowed him to be abusive, first of all, he denies to himself that his abuse is that important, that it ever really mattered, that it was as bad as I would have him believe. So complete rejection of those facts. Secondly, he hasn't cared to look into that stuff and to want to be a better person. And that's what it comes down to. That's what allows me to look at one person and say, there's a good person. And look at another person who has done the same things and say, there is not a good person. Now, when we're talking about people being good or bad, remember, there is nobody that is inherently good or bad, because every day that you're breathing, you have an opportunity to change your thinking. In other words, what I did not care about yesterday, I might wake up this morning and care about that thing. It happens. Does it happen to you? Happens to me all the time. Day by day, there are things I don't care about. And then one day I wake up and for some reason I get curious about that. I want to look more into it. I begin to care. So there's no such thing as people being inherently bad. Every day that we're breathing, we have an opportunity to care about things we didn't care about the day before. But hopefully you can see the equivalency law in effect there with my father. In order for me to understand how to view my father, I also had to understand how to view myself. What's the differences? I can't apply different standards outside of me that I apply to me. Another good example of the equivalency law is forgiveness. What would it require for me to forgive my father for all that he did? Okay, now what will it require for me to be able to forgive myself? whatever thing my Father would have to do to qualify for forgiveness, that's also what I have to do to qualify for forgiving my own self. Perfect balance, equivalence in all things. Now, I don't want to preach at actions for those of you who aren't religious, but the Bible is based on an equivalency principle. It's the whole reason why Christians around the world value and put great value on the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. That is a perfect example of equivalency. What Adam lost, Jesus Christ came to pay that price for. And the value of his sacrifice was exactly equal to what was lost in Adam when Adam sinned. That's equivalency. Now, so that's all I'm going to say about the religious thing. The only reason I bring it up is because it's that same equivalency principle or law that creates that authentic emotional health and recovery depends on. It's the whole way it works. If you think about boundaries, which, I usually talk about it as the BCCCs of emotional health: boundaries, communication, consequences, and conditions. The consequences and conditions are the equivalency principle or law in play. So you've done something you can't be in my life, but I'm going to create a condition that if you meet it, you can requalify to be back in my life. And that condition is an equivalence in value. So whatever you did to disqualify yourself from being in my life, I'm going to give you an equivalent positive that you can do that will requalify you. Same thing with consequences. All right. You've done, you've crossed a boundary that I have, something that I cannot accept, I don't want in my life. You've crossed that boundary. Now there is a consequence, which is equivalent to the injustice or the disregard that you have showed. For me, well, then the consequence is going to be equivalent in its severity and its permanence, maybe. But that's that balance, that teeter-totter, the equivalence, the harmony in life. Wherever you create an imbalance, then something has to be done to bring things back into balance. So that's a really good way to describe it when I'm talking about the equivalency law of emotional health. Wherever an imbalance is created, something equally has to be done, something of equal value to bring things back into balance. And that creates emotional health. Living day by day emotionally healthy is maintaining that balance. Yeah, in the past I've talked about it as a teeter-totter. A lot of folks call those seesaws, but it gives you a kind of a visual idea of what I'm talking about. The teeter-totter needs to be here. I'll give you another example of equivalency. I've said that how do you decide who to allow into your life and who to not allow into your life? And do you remember what the principle is for that? It's not just people, it's anything. So let's say that you like some social media thing, Facebook, X, Instagram. The formula is this: does it more greatly contribute to your happiness and peace and health, or does it more greatly contribute to your unhealth, discontentment, frustration? Now, here's where the equivalency thing comes in. I've said you cannot apply a perfection standard. So it's not just people who perfectly all the time only contribute to contentment. Why can't it be people who only contribute to contentment? Because not even we would qualify for that. Nobody is perfect. Nothing is perfect that can only contribute to happiness. So do you remember what the formula is? It's what more greatly contributes to peace, contentment, and health. What more greatly contributes to it. That, again, is the equivalency law in action. It's not expecting it's not allowing for an imbalanced expectation of people. It's based on a balanced expectation of people, one that takes in the fact that we have to be able to live up to whatever expectations we hold others to, right? So I can't hold you to an expectation that not even I could live up to. That's the equivalency principle. We base it on what is balanced. Penny says, I've been studying Romans and Luke. I think I understand the scriptures more now that I understand the equivalency concept. Back in ancient Israel, do you remember what the law stated? If you, let's say you're chopping firewood with an axe and a piece flies out and takes out somebody's eye because you didn't practice any safety, you weren't paying attention, and you start chopping firewood with a person standing right there, and then their eye comes out. What was the law? What did the law say? An eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for a hand, foot for a foot. That's the equivalency principle or law. It's if you caused it and somebody suffered unjustly because of what you caused, well, then you have to suffer that too. Doing so, right. Penny's got it. Doing so brings things back into balance. It's equivalent. Whatever the injustice was, then the penalty was the exact equivalent of that. All right, folks, we're 42 minutes in, 43 minutes in. I'm going to switch over to local supporters only. Love seeing you guys there on YouTube. Think about joining us over on Locals. It supports my work, allows me to continue doing this, and we talk about the real controversial stuff during the second private half with our Locals crew. So I'm going to switch over to Locals only. If I can figure out how to, there we go. Local supporters only. And you folks on Locals or YouTube, thanks for joining me today. Hope to see you over on Locals. Links at thelastsymptom.com if you want to know exactly how to do that.